Can you
appear
see
there.
my screen? Okay.
Yep, this is full screen now. It's okay.
Okay. All right. It's great to see you all. Thank you for the kind introduction, and it's really excellent to see Professor Bronto Wiono again. I can't believe it's been 10 years. That makes me feel older that it's been that long. And I'm also glad to see my former student Jafar who came to study at the University of Hawaii. So I'm really delighted to be able. I wish I could be with you in person. I'm really glad to be able to interesting conference. What I wanted to talk about, I titled my talk Sustainable, Resilient, and Just Built Environments, based on the overall themes of the conference. What I want to do, my background is really first and foremost as a transportation researcher. But increasingly, I've been doing more work on disasters and work related to urban planning and addressing hazards, hazard mitigation, climate adaptation, and risk management. And part of what I want to talk about are some of the challenges related to data and information and technologies, and how it can support our understanding of planning. And I think one definition of planning is that it is knowledge to action. And we want to plan for greater resilience in our communities. And so I think that there are opportunities to learn from disasters, from climate and extreme events, but also it's an opportunity to think about our priorities and our preferences and our values, and the role that information and increasingly now misinformation or even disinformation plays in terms of how we make our decisions and how we implement programs. I direct a congressionally authorized national center that's housed at the University of Hawaii. This is the National Disaster Preparedness Training Center. And we are a national center that develops and delivers FEMA certified training courses for first responders and emergency managers and others involved in disaster management. We also have, for many years, for more than 10 years, we've been working in Indonesia with the support of U.S. Agency for International Development. Currently, we are part of the USAID Invest DM project with Mercy Corps that involves knowledge exchange between BNBP and FEMA. And we have hosted many of the senior level officials from Indonesia in Hawaii and with our partner agencies in the United States, with FEMA, with the Emergency Management Institute, with the Center for Domestic Preparedness, and other partners that we work closely with. My last trip to Indonesia was this past May when we participated in the United Nations Global Platform on Disaster Risk Reduction in Bali, which was hosted by the government of Indonesia. As Professor Sarwidi mentioned, I have also served as the chairman of the National Domestic Preparedness Consortium. That includes Texas A&M, LSU, New Mexico Tech, and other partners that together develop and deliver the bulk of the training in the United States. So part of our knowledge exchange project involves bringing together, working together between the US and Indonesia with a focus on all hazards, natural, man-made, terrorism, and then focusing on preparedness, response, prevention, recovery, and mitigation. With such a broad agenda, there really is a need for integrated, interdisciplinary, whole community approaches. And I think that there are really important lessons that come from islands and places like Indonesia, and from cities and remote communities, isolated communities. And I want to speak about some of those issues and challenges. Urban planning, as I said before, is really about knowledge to action. And it focuses typically on cities and communities closest to the people, to the assets, to the resources, and also the hazards and threats. Within the field of urban planning, we've developed various tools for mapping, for zoning, for development, for managing infrastructure. We had that excellent presentation by Professor Widodo about wastewater treatment plants, but there's other infrastructure that's important as well too. I mean, roads and power systems and water supply systems and communication systems. They're also very important and significant social, cultural, economic, and political systems, which we need to integrate and bring together. And I think thinking about both the natural environment and the built environment is really critical to the work that we do in urban planning. Many different types of studies that we can do, before and after studies, after disasters occur, time series studies, comparative analyses. I think as Professor Widodo illustrated, we have all become throughout the world officially an urban species. I think it was 2008, looking at his excellent graphs that he showed both globally as well as in China, in Indonesia. Many parts of the world have already largely been urban species, but the challenges of planetary urbanization create particular threats and hazards and threats. I mean, the COP27 meetings have just been going on, and there's increased urgency to deal with the stressors associated with climate change, increased frequencies of hazard events, longer durations, more diverse hazards. And then when we couple them with the underlying geophysical threats, the earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes, there's and then the problem of cascading events associated with failure of infrastructure systems. There's continued loss of life and injuries and mounting economic losses as more people and assets and risk moves into the hazard or red zones. And of course, all of this stands in the way of the sustainable development goals and social progress. And I think there's increased conflict because of the urgency, the competing demands for resources, and the increased hazards and threats. In the US last year, again, it was a record-setting year in terms of the number of billion-dollar weather-related disasters, drought, flooding, hurricane, tornado, severe weather, wildfire, winter. And many times the same community is hit over and over again, both by repeated same disasters, but also a combination of many different types of hazards. And so one approach is to use technology to address these risks, to improve our data collection, using advances in sensor technologies, GIS, information communications technologies. We are doing a lot of work with Google Earth and Street View, and I'll show some images of that. But what we are doing is trying to integrate satellite aerial photographs, land use files to support decision-making and planning, both for response functions such as search and rescue, but also for initial damage assessment, debris management, mass care, and then recovery support functions. These technologies require training, education, and capacity building. And part of our work is to try to link all of this to the knowledge economy. Among the most recent work, and this comes from the recent Hurricane Ian in Florida, where I sent teams which have the same equipment that Google Street View uses. And so we've created a platform where we show the pre-storm event, which is, if you go to Google Street View, this is the bottom panel shows that. And then right above it, we've captured the same imagery from that same location. So you can see the amount of damage that occurred. And we built this into a mapping function so that you can move around and navigate this. And this is used both to confirm some of the modeled estimates that we do, but also to support the response and recovery efforts by many that are involved in this. Last week, actually on Sunday, I just got back from Barcelona, where we had the Urban Transitions Conference. It's primarily a gathering sponsored by Elsevier. Many of the editors are there. And I presented on the topic of urban resilience. And part of the talk I gave involved this bibliometric research of keyword searching on Science Direct. And what I was interested in looking at is how many papers have there been on the topic of urban resilience. And if you look at this over this period from 2012 to 2021, the last decade, there's been a 28% growth on papers on urban resilience. And so this topic of urban resilience is increasingly important. If we look more closely at the keywords, the keyword searches, the top 50 keywords in 2012, are represented here and under urban resilience, climate effects, resilience, urban design. And then if we look at the top 50 keywords from last year, urban green infrastructure, and also COVID and the pandemic emerge as hottest topics that researchers are looking at. Also, interestingly enough, more mention of environmental justice concerns, and then also community resilience. And I think that fits into this growing need for more research on social capital, on Gotong Royong. These are topics that we're very interested in. I've done some papers and research with Japanese colleagues on social capital, on bonding, bridging, and linking social capital for solid waste management. But I think these are really important topics. One thing that the pandemic did was highlight the importance of social distancing, travel restrictions, face coverings, physical barriers, especially in the initial period where there weren't vaccines or treatments that were available. So for us, we had to reprogram a lot of our research that we were doing for machine vision, machine learning detection of things like sea level rise or wave heights, and then repurpose the same tools for determining whether or not people were wearing masks or not, or maintaining social distances, because it was really important to have this information to better understand how to manage the spread of the disease. Because really, before the medical treatment, we had to curtail movements between cities, within cities, to stop the spread of disease. And it really highlights the importance of the connections between transport and public health. The other thing that came out was the value of active transportation, bicycle, walking, where there's ventilation and air circulation and sunlight. And so part of the research that we've been working on is how can you green transport to make it more active, but also to make it safer in the event of disease. You know, an editor of this journal called TRIP, Transportation Research Interdisciplinary Perspective. And in the first year of the pandemic, you know, we decided we would do a special issue on COVID-19. I think we published in the first year 46 papers. I thought we were going to publish about a dozen. The second year was like 81 or 89. And this year already it's 81. So it's over 200 papers that we have published on different aspects of COVID-19. You know, this is a general transportation journal. There's still other papers that we're publishing as well too. But there's been so much attention to the pandemic because the transportation sector was so heavily impacted. Cruise ships, airlines, tourism. You know, the impacts were quite significant, but they were very uneven and big differences across different economic sectors and different groups and populations. Essential workers were at highest risk. The people that had to work and that couldn't, you know, use online communications, but actually had to be there in person, they were at highest risk of catching the disease. Then the secondary impacts of shutting down businesses, business activities were also really quite significant. I think this shift towards telework and digital exchange raises some genuine questions about who has access to technology and equipment, and who can easily switch from face-to-face to online interactions. And this raises important questions about social justice, about equity, about underserved communities. You know, the other thing about the pandemic, you know, when a virus jumps between one species to another, it's really about the WUI interface, the wildlife-urban interface. You know, this isn't just about wildfires. It's really about not having enough buffer zones, enough natural areas, enough separation between people and other species. And I think we need to think more about restoration, habitat protection. And I think this is a wake-up call to prevent further collapse. This image that I showed there was taken, you know, in Waikiki. And if you've been to Hawaii, ordinarily, this is one of the most busiest intersections, and there was no one there because of the pandemic. You can see this, this store was boarded up, it was shut down, and there's no people here. And so I think that there are real threats to humanity if we don't get our act together in terms of managing the wildlife urban interface. My last comment that I want to make, I think there's another huge challenge that we face, and that is the problem of misinformation and disinformation. I mean, I think we've always had the problem of misinformation because of errors in our research, because of uncertainty and tremendous variability in terms of what we are working on, and complexity. I think we're also suffering from information overload, which has been exacerbated by the proliferation of social media, and also the disruption of facts. We've always had that. We've always had a propaganda, but I think the pandemic also gave opportunity for more profiteering, criminal behavior, and also terrorism associated with the use of these information technologies. The other problem that we face as well too is that many of the technology companies, there's backlash against them. They're too big to fail. There are problems with managing these large multinational corporations. So we launched a research project at the UN meetings on misinformation and disinformation. If you click on this QR code, it will take you to a survey that we're doing to try to understand the significance of the problem, especially for those who work on disaster response and recovery. And we're looking for examples or cases where misinformation or intentional proliferation of disinformation occurred, and then how were these problems mitigated, and are there best practices associated with that? We are looking for other partners and other researchers that are interested in this topic. So if you're interested in working with us on that, or if you have insights on that, please contact me. Again, you can reach me at the University of Hawaii. I'm happy to send you more information about some of the specific research projects that we've been doing related to this. I think this whole topic of social capital and learning from Gotong Royong and other practices, I think is a hugely important next step. And I look forward to more discussion and potentially greater collaboration with you all. So thank you. And I will stop screen sharing there.